up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? How are you guys doing? Today, we're gonna be discussing the Garmin Forerunner 745 and the Garmin Forerunner 945. And both of these watches are super similar. They're both targeted towards triathletes. And from a feature perspective, they're really hard to tell apart. But I'm gonna talk about 5 reasons that you should consider buying the Forerunner 745 instead of the bigger and more expensive Garmin 945. And I've actually used both of these watches for a fair amount of swimming and biking and running. And I do think that there are a few scenarios where you're really gonna wanna pick one watch over the other. And just to keep you guys guessing, tomorrow I'm gonna do a very similar video to this one, but instead I'm gonna talk about why you should consider the 945 instead of the 745. Whenever I get that video put together, I'll link it up here as well. And I really can't think of a ton of reasons on why you would wanna own both of these watches. They're really just very, very similar watches. But I personally did go ahead and purchase both of these watches from the Dialed Cycling Lab. And I'll leave a link to their website, either here somewhere or in the description of this video, hopefully with some sort of discount code so that you guys can check that out whenever you guys want to. But I do wanna point out that Garmin is not paying me to make this video, and no one is reviewing any of this footage before you guys get to see it here on YouTube. And like I said, these watches are extremely similar. In fact, when I did my full review of the 745, I went ahead and I said, Garmin should have called this their 945S or 945 Small or some sort of naming like that. But that is the biggest reason that I think that anyone should consider picking up the Garmin 745 over the 945. The size is just slimmer and the weight is just a touch less. So this watch is 43.3 millimeters in circumference, and it's only 14.2 millimeters in depth. And when I measure depth, I'm measuring it with that optical heart rate monitor kind of bump that's on the back of the watch. And I do think it's important that we actually talk about the depths of watches, because when we really think about how a watch feels big and bulky, I really think we're talking about how high up it sits off your wrist. Now, both of these watches have that same optical heart rate monitor built into them, and they both have what they call their pulse ox monitor, meaning that they can both kind of measure your blood oxygen saturation level. Now, the 945 is 47 millimeters in width, and it actually is 1 millimeter kind of thicker in depth, so 15 millimeters that way. And to me, it doesn't feel hugely bigger, but I do think that that's probably the biggest reason that people will choose the 745 over the 945. Now, as far as weight goes, not a huge difference here. The Garmin 945 weighs 52 grams and the Garmin 745 weighs 47 grams. I guess, with these watches both being pretty light, you can slightly notice the difference. Definitely not something that I would base my decision on. Now, both of these watches have extremely similar software. It's really hard to tell them apart, but the 745 does have a few minor things that are different. One of the features that's new is called the daily suggested workout. So this is different than Garmin's coaching piece, but it's kind of basing your daily suggested workout on your current training status and your training load and your VO2 max value. And it's available for both running and cycling workouts. So today, my watch will suggest a threshold workout with 15 minutes at 250 watts. And so then after that, it will actually, if you so choose, it'll step you through that workout. So that would be, your warm up, your actual workout, and the cool down itself. And both of these watches have a ton of different activity types, swimming, biking, and running, of course, but you can also select stuff like cross-country skiing or stand-up paddleboard, which I actually like doing. There's even that new swim run option. I've talked about it before, and it's definitely something that I'm very interested in trying at some point. But there is a new activity type that is specific to the Garmin 745, and that is track run. And basically, it's just a way for you to be able to take this particular GPS activity and tie it a little bit tighter to the track. To do it, you just take it for your track run and you actually set track run activity. You'll need to run a few laps to calibrate it and then tell it specifically what lane you're using. So I will just say, if you are familiar with using a GPS while doing a track workout, you know that it's, hit or miss. I will say that this mode will help improve accuracy and distance and your speed while you're actually doing those workouts. And it's definitely a feature that I hope will come to, all of Garmin's running specific watches in the near future. Okay, so the Garmin 745 and the 945, they both use the Sony high precision dual frequency GPS chipset, or they use some variety of that chipset. I would like to think that they're probably using the exact same chipset in both of these watches, but from what I'm seeing, the 745 tends to provide a bit more accuracy when it comes to GPS. In this example here, I'm actually just running through a neighborhood, and as you can see, the blue line is the 945 and the purple line is the 745. And the 745 here is much more true to the line that I actually took, both on the sidewalk when I crossed the street and onto the other sidewalk. And then later on, when I actually took these watches out through the woods, I'd say through some fairly thick and dense forest, I basically did an out and back. And you can see here, that same purple line tracks back on itself a lot more accurately than the other lines. And I really can't explain why the 745 would be better than the 945 or for whatever reason. I'll probably need to do a bit more testing on that. Definitely not a reason that I would pick one watch over the other, but it is right now a reason that I think the 745 has a bit of an advantage over the 945. And lastly, I wanted to talk about price. Obviously important to all of us, but the suggested retail price for the 745 is $500, and the suggested retail price for the 945 is $600. So almost a 20% difference in price there. And that is a huge difference. But it gets weird when we start to look at current prices on Amazon. If you see here, like looking at the 945, it's priced really right at the similar or the same price as this 745. Now these prices might change, but I don't know what the heck is going on here. Should these watches really be priced the same? I don't think so. But I'll leave a link to wherever the best prices are in the description of this video. But the price between these two watches, I'm sure, is gonna fluctuate. And I'm sure there's gonna be great deals, when we get towards Black Friday and all of the holiday shopping that's coming up in the very near future. But ultimately, the 745 is supposed to cost less than the 945. And all of us kind of have different levels of price sensitivity, but I definitely think that we need to check current prices really before making that buying decision. And as I'll probably mention in tomorrow's video, I'm definitely gonna talk about some of the issues that I have with the 745. Probably the biggest one would be that, battery life being about half of what it is for the 945. You'll get 16 hours of GPS activity, when you're not using music, which is probably fine for a lot of you. My PR for the Ironman is, just under 10 hours, but honestly, I still think I'd be hesitant. I still think I'd be a little bit nervous using this watch. Lithium ion batteries just degrade over time, and everyone has bad days when they're out racing. The cutoff time for an Ironman is 17 hours. So I think if I were using this watch for a longer race, there's a couple of changes that I would make. First, I would just switch the GPS settings to GPS only instead of GPS plus GLONASS. Also, you can turn off the backlight, both the gesture backlight as well as backlight during activities. And lastly, I would disconnect it from your phone. So changes like that should give you a good bit more time. You're looking at somewhere in the range of 20 plus hours of activity with that GPS. And so I think at that point, towing the line at an Ironman or some of those longer ultra run events, you'd feel a little bit safer using the 745. But before you guys run out and buy this 745, in all honesty, I'm not 100% sure that it's the best deal for you. I really do think that I would only recommend this particular watch if it's the size and the weight that's kind of that determining factor for you making this purchase. I personally have a very small wrist. I like to call it like my aerodynamic wrists, but I prefer smaller watches. And the 945, it really doesn't bug me that much. And also keep in mind that a lot of the issues that I've talked about within this video really could be handled with software updates to the 945. And just this morning, I was actually talking to my buddy, Dave Dillon, who has a channel called Chase the Summit, fantastic channel. And he said, be on the lookout for an update to the Garmin 945, the 5.2 software update, which actually brings a lot of these features to the 945, making this video a little less useful to those of you guys that are looking to choose that 745. But if you're purchasing these watches, there's a couple videos that I'd recommend that you guys check out. You know, obviously the one that I'm doing tomorrow, I think I'm gonna call it why I think that you should pick the 945 over the 745, but also, you know, that more general Garmin Forerunner 745 review where I do, you know, an unboxing and I go over all the details of the particular watch. And I'll leave links to both of those videos, you know, right here at the end of this video. And if you found this video somewhat helpful in some small way, definitely drop down below the video, give me a like. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I really would appreciate it. And as always, I love the fact that you guys have taken some of your time to watch these videos, and we will see you guys on the next one.